Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be doing a time-lapse or speed drawing or draw with me or whatever they call it these days video where I showcase my recent charcoal drawing called Midnight Thoughts. This drawing is very important drawing for me because I guess it marks the return of return back to creating art on my YouTube channel, which has been 3 years in the making. I'm just going to showcase my process, my thoughts going into this, so maybe you can learn as well and apply this to the work you do. So yeah, let's get into it. Right now I'm using a Vine charcoal stick, which allows me to create shapes or apply shapes and marks on the paper without permanently damaging it. So this way, if I decide I want to erase things, I can do that without really, messing with the paper too much. So with charcoal drawings, the objective here is to sneak up on things, gradually work and start from less permanent to more permanent as we go on. So that's why I use the Vine charcoal to do that. So this piece is basically a cityscape piece. There's a lot of city, buildings, lights, all of that stuff happening in the background. So the beautiful thing about the Vine charcoal is because it's rectangular in shape, I can create an entire skyscraper with just one shape, with one stroke of the Vine charcoal, which is pretty convenient. I'm actually drawing with my phone. So I have my phone that I'm looking at for to zoom in and out on the details, but I also have my laptop, my MacBook, on the left side of the studio for the more general view of the drawing or the reference photo, so that I can have a more peripheral vision view of what's going on rather than this tunnel visioning on certain areas. Because when you're doing a drawing, you want to look at things from a peripheral vision. You want to take a step back because then it allows you to look at the piece as a whole rather than honing on one area and then forgetting about the other areas, and then it becomes a mess, So right now I'm just using the eraser to create and add light effects and the city, so I have an idea of what the brightest part of the charcoal drawing is. So then I can focus on what the darkest part of the area is as well. So you want to gradually sneak up on the charcoal drawing, figure out the brightest areas, and then figure out the darkest areas. So as we find the brightest areas, we're also discovering and looking for the darker areas as well. And for those darker areas, that's where I would use my compressed charcoal, which is basically like the Vine charcoal, but more permanent, darker shapes that aren't really that easy to erase. So I use this when I am completely and 100% certain that this is where the area is supposed to be, because it's not something you can erase. So that allows me to get the darkest areas on the drawing. So as I'm looking at this piece, I'm reminding myself of because you're not just drawing a piece. But for me, it's not just about creating a drawing. It's about creating an experience. It's about creating a feeling. So it's also very important to me, as I'm being technical in my approach and trying to nail things from a technical perspective, I'm also thinking about what it feels like to be in the nighttime, or what the city feels like, what the cityscapes feel like, So that's very important to me as well, to get that overall feeling. So the viewer, when they look at the drawing, they also feel like they're there. They get this immersive experience of the nighttime. Super important. So again here, I'm using the Vine, so I go back and forth from using the compressed charcoal for darker areas, and using the Vine charcoal for either areas that I'm not really certain where the proportions are, I'm trying to guesstimate where to put things, or I might just use the Vine charcoal for more of the mid-tone areas. So the areas that aren't as dark for where you would use a compressed charcoal, and the areas that aren't too bright to where you would just use an eraser. So the Vine charcoal is really good for those mid-tones, middle kind of tone areas that are borderline dark and bright. So here I'm using my blending stump to focus more on the face. I'm not actually using my blending stump as much in this piece compared to how I would usually use it. But I am trying to focus on one area, which is the face. I'm trying to perfect it so I have that to guide me along the rest of the piece, making that the focal point. But I do tend to bounce around a lot. But upon bouncing around, I find that, okay, maybe let's get specific with this particular area so that then everything else kind of falls into place. So when I want to like get into that focal point detail kind of area, so now I'm using the pencil to create finer details. For me, the pencil is usually a last step thing that I use when I want to get finer details in the areas that were kind of roughly created with the vine charcoal and the compressed charcoal. So in those subtle buildings, I'm using the pencil to subtly sneak up on things, increasing value gradually. Trying not to get too dark too fast, because then it becomes hard to erase. Patience is very important when working on a charcoal drawing, as opposed to like an oil painting where, you know, if you find a dark area, you just apply dark paint. With this, you want to start with something less permanent, and then when you're sure that that's where it's supposed to be, then you might go permanent. So like charcoal drawing requires a lot of patience, and if you have that, then that's where it works out for you. If you don't have that, it's going to be a long day. So what you're seeing here is like a 5-6 hour process that I've condensed to like 10 minutes. It doesn't show all of the process because, you know, there's some parts with cuts or some parts where I take a break and stuff. But it should give you an idea of how I work. So you shouldn't, maybe when you're watching this, don't feel discouraged to like, oh, I'm working too fast, or oh, he's putting all this stuff together quickly. It takes time. And with time, you kind of get the gist of how to approach a charcoal drawing, which is something that I'll be teaching you guys about in future drawing videos. So now I'm just adding rain effects, adding drops of rain in the scene, you know, to create that kind of atmospheric feeling, like a scene out of a movie. Everything's moving, everything's flowing, everything feels alive. I'm wearing my mask to apply the acid effect, which is, you know, a kind of toxic thing to do, so the mask is required. And I'm a fan of like, I like the organic textural feel of art. So when I create charcoal drawings, for me it's important that, you know, that texture that comes with the acid effect is prevalent, so that when you look at it, it feels organic. It feels like an analog photograph or an old movie, that kind of vibe. I really like that. I really try to capture that in my charcoal drawings. So as I add the effect, now I want to add back, because the effect kind of washes out a lot of the darks and the brights, the highlights. So what I'm doing now is I'm just adding them back in. Adding the darks back in so they can pop, and adding the highlights back in so they can also pop as well. But now just finishing touches, some blending here and there, some erasing here and there, just to make the piece look atmospheric. And yeah, I guess we're at the point of completion. And I want to thank you guys for coming along the journey of watching, you know, this piece take place. It was a very important piece for me because it marks the beginning of creating content for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe. If you have any questions, ask below and I shall answer them. It's been Victor, and until next time, see you soon.